broken his silence regarding accusations leveled last August that he had known of ex-Cardinal Theodore McCarrick's serial homosexual abuse and yet reinstated him to a position of influence in the Vatican. "About McCarrick I knew nothing, obviously, nothing, the Pope told Mexican reporter Valentina Elizarraqui in a lengthy interview released Tuesday by Vatican News. "But you know that I knew nothing about McCarrick, or I wouldn't have kept silent, would I?" he asked. Last August, the former Vatican nuncio to the United States, Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, released an 11-page report in which he declared he had personally informed Pope Francis about McCarrick's misdeeds in 2013 but that Francis had restored him to a position of trust, consulting him regarding the naming of future U.S. bishops. Pope Francis knew from at least June 23, 2013 that McCarrick was a serial predator, Vigano stated, and yet, although he knew that he was a corrupt man, he covered for him to the bitter end. Indeed, he made McCarrick's advice his own. Vigano also said that Pope Benedict had placed a series of sanctions on McCarrick, including a ban on saying Mass in public or giving lectures, whereas Pope Francis set him free from all constraints. Further documentation came to light Tuesday from a separate source confirming the existence of sanctions against McCarrick dating back to 2008. When journalists confronted Pope Francis about these allegations 2 days after the Vigano report was published, the Pope refused to confirm or deny them. "I read that statement this morning," he said, in reference to the report. "I read it and sincerely I must tell you this, you and all of you who are interested, read the statement carefully and come to your own conclusion. I won't say a word about this," he said. "I believe that the statement speaks for itself and you have the sufficient journalistic ability to draw your own conclusions. This is an act of trust. When some time has passed and you have come to your conclusions, maybe I will speak," he said. In his interview released today, Pope Francis said he had in fact already answered the question. However, no news media ever reported this, and there is no record of the Pope ever replying to the question. "I said it several times, that I didn't know, that I had no idea," Pope Francis told Elizarraqui. In the interview, the Pope said that he had not answered the question immediately because he had wanted to imitate the silence of Jesus during his passion, and because he had placed his trust in journalists to find out for themselves what had happened. "And the result was good, it was better than if I had tried to explain or defend myself," he said. Regarding the 2013 meeting with Vigano, the Pope said, "I don't remember whether he talked about this with me, whether it's true or not. No idea." Commander Phil Robertson expressed hope for Donald Trump remaining in office and Americans returning to faith while slamming the Democrat Party as run by the evil one when he joined Breitbart News Daily Radio on Sirius XM Patriot 125 Tuesday. "If everybody just stepped back and looked at the Democratic Party and what they're into, they are now into gross sexual immorality and perversion, they're into murder, and they are into a continuing non-stop barrage of lies," said Robertson. He said add those up, "Well, Jesus said 2,000 years ago that the evil one is the father of murder and lies. So that is who is running the Democratic Party, the evil one. I hope President Donald Trump stays in for another 4 years and there's possibility of hope, but we're in a mess, my man," Robertson told Breitbart News Daily host Alex Marlow, who brought up America's founding fathers. "God's been warning us from heaven this entire time. The founding fathers warned us when they were on the earth. And I'm warning them now along with you," Robertson added. Robertson and sons Al and Jace are launching a new podcast entitled Unashamed. He said the reason these two sons are joining him is that among his 4 sons who know the Bible well, Al and Jace seem to stand out. He said the podcast will cover the questions, where did we come from, what are we doing here, and is there a way out of here? He pointed to the Bible, Jesus Christ, doing what is right, loving God, and loving your neighbor. "There is still hope for the country, but we must be very vigilant and turn it back to God, use the scriptures to teach our children," said Robertson, who spoke of the great need for faith during this period in history. He then remarked that most people would call the Democrat Party crazy, but countered that to say, what they actually really are very, very evil. Robertson said that's what it's all about, then pushed further, "They're so evil, they seem like they're mentally ill. We're trying to show America how we have to be with fathers and their children. We're showing them that must be handed down from generation to generation or you lose that family structure which we have now lost in America," said Robertson. "We've lost it because we didn't, the parents, especially a father, didn't hand that down to their children. A loving mother, a father who loves his children and their mother, it starts right there, and you teach them via the scriptures, and you rebuke them, you correct them, and you train them so that they can be righteous. They will do what is right. You teach them to salute the flag, you teach them to be patriotic, you teach them to love their neighbors, meaning obey their teachers, obey the law enforcement, said Robertson, who said how to teach these will be included in the podcast. Robertson's hope is that he and his sons will help the American family. 50 million of America's families, my man, do not have a father, he said, as evidence that the American family is in shambles. I'm making a valiant effort, me and my sons, to try to get America to turn back and get a little common sense, a little godliness in them. He cited 1 Timothy 3:16 as indicative of the instruction listeners will see in the podcast. What is the downside for a group of individuals to loving God and loving each other? Robertson said, asking listeners to think about that. Netflix has become the first Hollywood studio to speak out against the recent spate of state laws putting restrictions on abortion, especially that from the state of Georgia, where a burgeoning film industry resides. A growing list of individuals and groups in and outside the film industry are agitating against Georgia, including director Reed Morano and actors Alyssa Milano, Elizabeth Perkins, and Mark Hamill. Organizations such as the Producers Guild of America and the ACLU have also called for boycotts of Georgia over the state's new heartbeat abortion law that bans abortion after a fetal heartbeat can be detected, usually around the 5th or 6th week of pregnancy. Despite the growing chorus of protesters in the film industry, no studios have taken up the cause until now. Netflix has become the first studio to speak out against the abortion laws. The company was the only studio to respond to a request for a statement by industry newspaper, Variety. We have many women working on productions in Georgia, whose rights, along with millions of others, will be severely restricted by this law, Ted Sarandos, Netflix's chief content officer, told Variety. It's why we will work with the ACLU and others to fight it in court. Given the legislation has not yet been implemented, we'll continue to film there, while also supporting partners and artists who choose not to. Should it ever come into effect, we'd rethink our entire investment in Georgia. Cable TV network Starz has also made what might be considered a glancing response to the abortion law in Georgia by announcing a donation to pro-abortion groups while airing its series, P-Valley, which was filmed in the Peach State. However, Starz would not make any more specific comments in response to Variety's questions. The Motion Picture Association of America has also made a statement on the situation in Georgia but has only said it is monitoring events there. The MPA has not announced any particular goals or issued any specific condemnations. The MPA did note the human impact of the film industry in Georgia, noting that Georgia reported 92,000 film industry jobs and more than $9 billion in film production spending. Actor Jim Carrey unleashed another politically charged drawing on Tuesday, this time demanding that Robert Mueller testify in public about President Donald Trump and insisting that the fate of the free world is at stake if he does not appear. We understand your desire to testify in private, Mr. Mueller, but people don't believe the news anymore because of someone you should have recommended for indictment, Jim Carrey captioned his message, depicting Mueller as a prune-faced old man. Carrey decried Mueller's desire to testify only in a closed session, one not open to public scrutiny. In person, you could make them believe, Jim Carrey continued. No pressure, though. It's just the future of the free world at stake. Mueller delivered an 800-page report to Congress, which was later released to the public, showing that President Donald Trump did not collude with the Russian government to affect the 2016 presidential election. But since he issued his extensive report based on millions of pages of documents and thousands of interviews, Mueller has evinced a reticence to testify in public before Congress. The Sonic the Hedgehog star rejected the extensive Mueller report in April with a tweet depicting Trump in a scene from The Exorcist and featuring a message insisting that Trump is definitely not exonerated and Barr definitely couldn't go any lower. Former Vice President Joe Biden cozied up to a 10-year-old girl on Tuesday, despite his promise to control his personal interactions with women and children. "I'll bet you're as bright as you are good-looking," Biden said to a girl who asked him a question at an American Federation of Teachers town hall in Houston, Texas. He exclaimed when the girl told him that she wanted to be a journalist, and led her over to meet the reporters in the room. "By the way, as these guys will tell you, I'm not always their favorite subject, but the truth of the matter is, the reason why we're who we are is called a free press," he said, as the audience applauded. Biden then urged someone in the room to take the girl to meet the press so she could meet some role models. Some reporters found the exchange rather odd. The former vice president turned criticism prior to launching his campaign about his habit of touching women and children in public without their consent. In April, Biden explained in a video released by the campaign that he would be much more mindful of his behavior in the future. The boundaries of protecting personal space have been reset. I get it. I get it. I hear what they're saying and I understand it, he said. I'll be much more mindful. That's my responsibility and I'll meet it.